The names Lepanto and Nafpaktos. Older names Lepanto by the Franks, Lepanto by the Venetians, Inebachti by the Turks, Small Algiers by the pirates, Epaktos in the Middle Ages, and Epachtos in modern Greek. The name Lepanto is not Venetian. It is a Greek name altered in Italian. The name is Epaktos, and in the accusative case is Epakto. The Venetians, however, read Epanto instead of Epakto. The Italian article L with an apostrophe was also placed in the beginning of the noun, and the name Epakto became Lepanto. Epaktos is a Greek compound word, epi and akti, on the coast, referring to the city of Nafpaktos, which is built on the coast and beach of the Corinthian Gulf. Nafpaktos is a city with a long history. It is said that it got its name from the words nafs, which means ship, and the verb pignimi, which means to fasten different parts together, fit together, or build, a shipbuilding city. So Nafpaktos was actually a shipyard, a place where ships were built and repaired. The city first appears in 1104 BC with the Dorians, who on their descent used Nafpaktos to build rudimentary ships, rafts to be precise, so Nafpaktos remained a legacy. The harbor's main entrance. Our journey from the castle city of Nafpaktos, one of the most ancient cities in Greece, will leave us unforgettable impressions. It is characterized as a traditional settlement because its castle starts from the harbor and reaches very high on the pine-covered hill. One lovely thing about Nafpaktos is that it combines the sea, the lowland, and the mountain. The harbor of Nafpaktos has always been a source of prosperity for the city. It was initially fortified during the 5th and 4th centuries BC. In medieval time, its defenses were first designed by the Venetians, who incorporated it into the castle city with 5 levels. 4 transverse walls join the 2 side walls, arms of the castle that come down to the harbor. It was the focal point of the city activity until modern times. The harbor defenses. The preserved walls are a spectacular example of medieval defense architecture. The 2 towers flanking its entrance, the notched battlements of the harbor walls, and the sea gate at the west quay belong to the Venetian era. The Ottomans reinforced the harbor walls with watchtowers, such as the one on the eastern tower and another over the sea gate. Rectangular crenels are made, modifications for the use of artillery. In the 19th century, after the Greek independence, a customs office operated on the western quay of the harbor of Nafpaktos. At this point stands the statue of George Anemogiannis. George Anemogiannis was born in 1798 on the island of Paxos. At the time of the Greek Revolution in 1821, he was a sailor at a merchant ship owned by Laskarina Bouboulina. On June 10, 1821, he took part in one of the first naval attacks against an Ottoman target as the skipper of a fire ship. During the attack, he was arrested and executed by the authorities as an example to other rebels. There are 2 monuments in his honor. One statue is located on the Venetian bastion at the entrance of the harbor of Nafpaktos, the place where he died. This statue faces west, towards the island of Paxos, the birthplace of George Anemogiannis. That is where a second statue is situated, at the south entrance to the harbor of Gaios, which was designed by the Greek sculptor Nicholas Pavlopoulos in 1966. Gaios is the main harbor on Paxos, the smallest of the 7 principal Ionian islands in Greece, and, by the way, the largest settlement situated on the east coast of the island. It is named after a homonymous pupil of St. Paul the Apostle, who brought Christianity to the island. At Gaios, there is a church of the Holy Apostles, Peter and Paul, with a wall inscription on the east side of the church building that says, "The tomb of St. Gaius, pupil of Apostle Paul, is located in the altar." The coat of arms is the principal part of a system of hereditary symbols dating back to early medieval Europe, used primarily to establish identity in battle. There had to be a symbol of the ruler's authority, but what animal was chosen to be identical to strength and power? The lion. The lion has been considered synonymous with power and authority since ancient civilizations. Virtues were associated with this animal, which were to distinguish a ruler, such as bravery, strength, and grandeur. When the territory of Nafpaktos was controlled twice by the Republic of Venice, this symbol of royal power had a dominant position. During the first Venetian occupation, 1499 to 1686, Nafpaktos, named Lepanto by the Venetians, was further fortified and took more or less its present form. The fortress and the harbor, although pre-existing, were reconstructed and became clearly Venetian from the architectural point of view. The Venetians made sure that the best-known heraldic symbol was fixed on a particular wall. A well-preserved stone-carved coat of arms can be seen on the upper left corner of the western tower at the entrance of the harbor of Nafpaktos. That happened because the Venetian Republic, traditionally known as La Serenissima, was at that time a sovereign state and maritime republic in parts of northeastern Italy. The coat of arms of the Republic of Venice can also be seen on the banner of the Holy League used in the naval battle of Lepanto in 1571. Nafpaktos is worldwide known for its naval battle on October 7, 1571, between the Ottoman and the Christian fleet. The naval battle of Lepanto took place at the entrance of the Corinthian Gulf, when the joint fleet of Venice, Genoa, Spain, the Pope and allies defeated the Ottoman fleet, challenging its power over the Mediterranean. Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, who was widely regarded as the greatest Spanish writer, known for his novel Don Quixote, served on Andrea Doria's battleship as an officer. To honor the participation in the naval battle, his statue was placed in the cultural park Miguel de Cervantes, also known as the Cervantes Park, at the harbor of Nafpaktos. Each year, at the beginning of October, the naval battle is being reenacted with various scenarios within the harbor, and at the same time, a memorial is held to those who lost their lives. A beautiful and comforting tribute to all the deceased is expressed with a floral wreath thrown out to the sea. Citizens from Europe visit Nafpaktos in order to pray for peace at this place. It is a fact that many war visitors, even European ambassadors, were driven by curiosity or paying homage to their deceased ancestors. There are several memorial plaques placed by various embassies in this Cervantes Park. There are also numerous presentations and lectures, including tours of the highlighted sites and monuments of the city. An epitaph anthem is never needless in the Venetian harbour of Nafpaktos. That is why every Holy and Great Friday a multitude of candles sail in the calm sea, reminding the pilgrims of the sacrifice of Christ at the Calvary. However, in Nafpaktos, above all, we praise peace, life, acceptance of others, and freedom. Among the known travelers who visited Nafpaktos was Evliya Çelebi. He was a 17th century Ottoman explorer who traveled through the territory of the Ottoman Empire and neighboring lands over a period of 40 years, recording his commentary in a travelogue called the Book of Travel. Evliya Çelebi mentions the existence of the gates of the inner fortress, which is known by the name Sideroporta. The gate is located on the wall that divides the two levels of the main city enclosure, that is the harbor and the upper city. These two levels communicated through this gateway. It is a pedestrian route that survives well, and the left door hanging to this day in the gateway is certainly medieval. The design of the door is with the use of normal oak boards, some 1.5 inches thick laid vertically, and the door is covered with horizontal strips of iron studded with iron rivets. Anyone can see a well-preserved box matriculation above the Sideroporta gate, which is none other than the floor opening between the supporting corbels of the battlement. The structure is thought to have originated as Crusader imitation of Mashrabiya, referring to the architectural element which is characteristic of traditional architecture in the Islamic world and beyond. In Turkish, it is called Sakhnisin, from Persian, and this has been adopted into Greek as Sakhnisi, which is a traditional type of bay window found in northern Greece, the Balkans, and the Middle East. In the past, the intention of this box matriculation was to discourage invaders by dropping water or other material on unwelcomed visitors at the base of the defensive wall. But today, all visitors are heartily welcomed at the Sideroporta gate in Nafpaktos.
If there's a Big Ben in London, then there is a Seraphim in Nafpaktos. It's 10 minutes late.
Clock towers have become landmarks in cities. The clock tower of Nafpaktos is the newest monument of the historic city of the province of Etolo-Akarnania. After the Sideroporta gate, arched iron door, the famous inner gate from the last fortification to the next is the Mosque district, or Vizir Mosque, which owes its name to the mosque, part of the minaret of which is preserved. The stones of the Vizir Mosque were used in 1910 for the erection of the clock tower. This tower is located on the circular bastion at the southeast of the first zone, entering the second zone that encloses the upper town, the old district. The clock tower is at the end of the uphill of the steep stone staircase, the point where the lower east entrance exit of the city, Salona Gate, was located. The Salona Gate was on the east side of the Cathedral Church of St. Demetrius, which was demolished around 1880. In 1909, after the new administrative division of the Greek state, the boundaries of some dioceses were changed when the old diocese of Nafpaktia and Evritania was re-established, of which Seraphim became bishop. History records the year 1910 when Metropolitan Seraphim Domvoitis built the clock tower. Its structure is square in cross-section, built of hewn stone. Inside the construction is the clock bell. Its sound, which the locals called Seraphim in honor of its inspirer, is heard when the clock rings. The stones, along with the clock bell that consisted the top part of the clock tower, collapsed in the 1989 earthquake. Red bricks were used to restore this monument during the same year. Although clock towers are today mostly admired for their aesthetics, they once served an important purpose. Before the middle of the 20th century, most people did not have watches, and prior to the 18th century, even home clocks were rare. The first clocks did not have faces, but were solely striking clocks, which sounded bells to call the surrounding community to work or to prayer. They were therefore placed in towers so the bells would be audible for a long distance. Clock towers were placed near the centers of towns and were often the tallest structures there. As clock towers became more common, the designers realized that a dial on the outside of the tower would allow the townspeople to read the time whenever they wanted. The use of clock towers dates back to antiquity. The earliest clock tower was the Tower of the Winds in Athens, which featured 8 sundials and was created in the 1st century BC during the period of Roman Greece. In its interior, there was also a water clock, or klepsydra, driven by water coming down from the Acropolis. The old district of the castle city of Nafpaktos, known as the Upper City, is on the 2nd level. A long extension of walls in the east, leading to a strong Venetian circular rampart built in an extremely dominant position, is a gateway. This northeast gate is known as the Falcoporti gate. The wall turns west, thus attaining an east-west direction over the craggy eastern slope of the castle, and safeguards the high-lying citadel. The medieval wall is preserved to its maximum height, 15 meters, as is visible from the foundation level up to the crenellation, and it is reinforced with strong rectangular bastions. A lower bulwark, bearing gun loopholes in its higher part, extends outside and parallel to the east wall. The Venetians formed a semicircular bastion and a reinforced observatory with a monumental gate, which is decorated with a relief plaque with the Lion of St. Mark, symbol of Venice. The relief plaque can be seen from the south side of this bastion, located right below the peripheral, curved stone frieze at the top of its masonry, typically Venetian, that still decorates its grey, sullen face. The Venetian bastion, massive and imposing, in the shape of a truncated cone, presents an architectural and structural resemblance to the large bastion of the castle of St. George in Cephalonia. The location of the Falcoporti gate, in which it was built, is dominant and carefully chosen to allow the defenders to protect, with cannons with which it was equipped, the entire southeastern side of the walls of Nafpaktos and its main gate, which was located on this side and was called Metropolitan. There were 2 inscriptions on the bastion and a Latin date, 1460, from which we can determine the exact date of its construction. Its battlements have been destroyed, and only one round opening for a mid-caliber gun of the 15th century survives today. From the middle of the 19th century, the semi-bastion lost its military value and its war destination, but continued to offer its services to the inhabitants, who used the floor of its paved terrace as a threshing floor until the 1960s. On the north side of the Venetian bastion, the Turks built a gloomy, massive fortress of simple rectangular shape with extremely thick and solid masonry, with a vaulted gunpowder depot and a guard room built on the side where the Venetian bastion was built. As soon as we enter the inner door of the low-arched gate, we find ourselves in the intermediate inner-built space of the gate, which has a vaulted imposing portico with a steep downhill slope externally invisible. The linear decoration of the dome emphasizes the plasticity of its volume and at the same time gives it grandeur. The fortress has a gate with 2 doors from which the upper city communicated with the outside world. For the stability of the arcuate, double wooden ironclad doors, there were fixed supports that are still preserved in the stone pillars. The outer door on the east side of the upper city. The inner door can be seen from its opening. So this gateway consists of an entrance door that has a 90-degree turning path attached to an oblique shape bastion, which describes the name given to this gate as Falcoporti, a compound word made up of two nouns, falso, oblique, and porta, door, Falcoporti or Falcoporta. Above the gate, on the outer masonry, we can observe the existence of a recess. There, the Turks had certainly immured a relief plate decorated with deterrent symbols to protect the gate and the castle from misfortunes and vicious invisible forces, just as is the case with the gate of the castle of Menevasia, above which reliefs of deterrent symbols have been placed. A coat of arms was certainly fixed on this particular recess, when the Venetians ruled the castle city of Nafpaktos. The main western entrance to the archaeological site of the castle consists of 3 successive gates. It lies beneath a high rectangular tower which has been reinforced with a sloping lower wall called scarpa. The first exterior gate penetrates a relatively short wall embedded in a bastion, the parapet of which bears numerous openings for the use of large fire weapons. The second gate is protected with battlements and a corridor which housed a guard and fire weapons. In the third gate, a part of a box matriculation is preserved. This box matriculation served to defend the underside, and for that purpose it was placed at the crown of the wall over the gate. When crossing the 3 gates, we finally enter the third zone of the castle, defined by walls with rectangular battlements. Battlements built on top of the wall can be seen with the alternating merlons and crenels for defense. The merlon is the solid upright section of the battlement, and the space between 2 merlons is called crenel. A small gate is opened at approximately the center of the internal wall between the second and the third zone and gives access between the core of the castle and the upper town. On July 20 each and every year, including the evening of the previous day, this small gate opens, allowing all visitors and pilgrims to enter free of charge in order to commemorate one of the great prophets of old, the prophet Elijah, or Elias, at the single-aisled church located further up. A pebbled pathway leads from the third zone through a single gate towards the fourth zone. The third zone houses the buildings of the modern archaeological guard, as well as ruined storage buildings and water cisterns. A pebbled pathway leads from the third zone through a single gate towards the fourth zone, where important religious and administrative buildings of Byzantine Nafpaktos were situated. The single-aisled chapel of Prophet Elias, built in the 19th century, just after the liberation of Nafpaktos in 1829, stands out at a position with abundant Byzantine and Ottoman vestiges. Remains of a 3-aisled Byzantine basilica church with a narthex were found around the 19th century church during excavations in 2008. The church measures 28 by 16 meters and has been identified with the metropolis of the town, dedicated to the Virgin of Nafpaktos, Theotokos Nafpaktiotis. According to literary sources, this church was repaired and embellished by the Metropolitan of Nafpaktos, Ioannis Apokafkos. The visible parts of the Byzantine basilica are the stylobites of the marble screen, a marble revetment with interlacing circles in the north aisle, as well as fragments of further marble revêtements depicting animals and plants embedded in a later floor. The west wall of its narthex, as well as burials opened outside the narthex, were excavated during reparation works of an Ottoman retaining wall by the project Restoration and Structural Reinforcement of the Castle of Nafpaktos and Enhancement of the Archaeological Site. The Byzantine church was succeeded by two mosques built in the 16th and the 17th centuries. The base of a minaret has been preserved, embedded in the facade of the 19th century Christian chapel of Prophet Elias, which in turn replaced the mosques. North of this chapel, the visitor can see a restored vaulted building and ruins of a Byzantine building with vaulted windows and brick decoration integrated with the exterior castle wall. Both buildings have been identified, according to scholars, with the episcopal complex, residence of the metropolitans of Nafpaktos during the 12th and 13th centuries. Each time Nafpaktos changed hands, the religion of the conqueror prevailed in the sacred places of worship of the conquered. This means that Islam was practiced by the Muslim Turks and Albanians, Catholicism was practiced by the Venetians, and Orthodoxy by the Greeks. Today, the chapel of Prophet Elias in the castle belongs to the Church of Saint Paraskevi in Nafpaktos. It is open to the public once a year on July 20 during its feast day, where the Divine Liturgy is held, and on the previous day during the Vespers service. Built on the hill above the city, the castle of Nafpaktos enticed people of all types and moods to acquire it. Greeks, Turks, Venetians, English, pirates, etc. used it as their base, leaving their own legacy on its current image. A pathway, followed by a pebbled ramp, leads to the entrance of the uppermost part of the citadel. Entering the fifth zone, we meet the core of the castle, better known by its Ottoman name, İçkale, a Greek rendition of the Turkish İçkale, inner fortress. The Acropolis forms essentially a separate fortress within the castle city, as depicted by some painters in the past. In this highly protected part of the castle, there is a complex of 4 restored vaulted rooms, behind which there is a small gate which the defenders could use to escape, as well as a large Byzantine cistern. The inner fortress is located 160 meters above sea level, where the visitor can enjoy the view of the Corinthian Gulf, including one of the world's longest multi-span cable-stayed bridges and longest of the fully suspended type, the Charilos Trikoupis Bridge, also known as Rio Anterior Bridge.